Up until 28,000 years ago from today, we were neighbors with them and even intermarried. We learned a lot from each other, feared and ran away. What was the reason for their extinction and the purpose of their existence, and more importantly, how did they live? Popular culture has portrayed them as primitive beings who couldn't think, even depicting them as cave dwellers dragging their partners by their hair. However, we realized that we unjustly underestimated them for many years. They buried their dead, took care of their sick, wore clothes, and skillfully used fire. These were once features we thought were exclusive to us. They were our cousins, very close cousins. Closer than you might imagine. Still, we know the end of this story because we are the storytellers. But how exactly did the story unfold? Africa is known as the place where everything began. The lands where modern humans first evolved and Homo sapiens existed. We, Homo sapiens, lived in various regions of the African continent for thousands of years. About 72,000 years ago, a small group of sapiens ventured outside this continent for the first time, spreading and proliferating in various regions of the world. This journey was a slow one. It wasn't something a hunter-gatherer could undertake just for pleasure. They had to know their geography and be close to water sources because those were the habitats of water-dwelling animals they hunted. Going on long journeys could mean moving away from these sources, risking death. Also, Homo sapiens, who had found suitable caves for shelter, would only leave their living space in cases of necessity. The hunter-gatherer settling in an area close to water sources might leave their habitat for three main reasons. The first reason was a shift towards a new geography due to climate change to ensure their survival. The second reason could be the population of the group reaching an unsustainable number, leading to divisions and dispersal into smaller groups. The third reason was the necessity for members excluded by the clan, for one reason or another, to find new homes. The sense of curiosity and exploration might have become a subdued enthusiasm alongside the struggle for survival. However, the likely adverse consequences of such a risk diminished the possibility of curiosity and the desire to explore being the reason for migration 70,000 years ago. Some groups, consisting of no more than 100 to 150 individuals at that time, started to step into the Asian continent for the first time due to the reasons mentioned. Today, you, me, and others, briefly anyone living outside the African continent, are the descendants of those ancestors who migrated from Africa around those dates. However, we haven't ventured much further than the Arabian Peninsula yet. However, returning was now impossible. Changing climate conditions led to the expansion of the Sahara Desert, resulting in the separation of the Asian and African continents due to the desert, and naturally, the closure of the return route for a long time. This extended journey continued eastward through the oceanic corridor, and during this journey, our ancestors would encounter an unexpected friend, the Denisovan humans. This encounter wouldn't remain just a meeting. Genetic data confirms it. We refer to Denisovan humans as the sister group of Neanderthals. This human species was a type that we found the oldest remains in the Altai Mountains region. Data indicates that the group, which separated from the Altai for unknown reasons, is the ancestor of present-day Malaysians living in Southeast Asia and Oceania. I wonder, what did the encounter between Homo sapiens and Denisovans, who were so similar yet so different, make our ancestors feel? We may never know. Records show that 58,000 years ago from today, Homo sapiens reached Australia. Furthermore, we come across a drawing of a wild pig dating back to 45,500 years ago. This drawing is the oldest known cave art attributed to Homo sapiens. It was created by our ancestors in the process of migrating to Australia, on an island in Indonesia. While the image signaling one of our first journeys serves as a precursor to the existence of primitive humans, the mystery behind our species reaching Australia remains a veil of secret. Indeed, the closest island that would facilitate their passage to Australia was approximately 50 miles or about 90 kilometers away from present-day Australia. However, the exact methods and compelling reasons for our ancestors daring crossing to this continent 58,000 years ago have not been conclusively determined. One claim from research suggests it might have been achieved with very primitive raft boats. Researchers attempting to unravel the mysteries of how humans first reached Australia combined advanced deep-sea mapping, journey simulation techniques, and genetic information to show that intentional travels between islands were carried out by large groups, using the most modern modeling methods similar to those used to investigate the wreckage of Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370. The research team simulated hundreds of possible voyage routes to trace the likely paths of ships found in 3 archaeological sites on the islands of Timor and Roti. Factors such as winds, ocean currents, and rowing were considered during the research. The expert study provides a new perspective on the first humans to set foot on the shores of Australia. The expert suggests that these people must have been skilled sea navigators who intentionally embarked on a journey to discover new territories. The coastal strip of Australia was quite different 50,000 years ago. The sea level was lower, but there was no land connection with other continents. There was a series of islands in the north of Australia, and these navigators must have passed through these islands to reach the mainland of Australia. This was a carefully planned action by a significant number of people, and the founding population of Australia should have been between 100 and 200 individuals. The findings demonstrate that the first Australians were quite adept at boat construction, navigation, and planning. This research should help change the perception that the settlement of Australia began with a handful of people who accidentally arrived and later lost the ability to use watercraft. Today, we know that Aboriginal Australians, the indigenous people of Australia, lived independently from the rest of the world as direct descendants of our ancestors who set out from Africa. According to researchers, more than 100 submerged but once habitable islands spread along the Kimberley coast in northwest Australia should have been among the arrival points of the first Australians. This journey, believed to have been made by hopping from island to island, likely spanned several thousand years, but during these times, on the other side of the world, another group of travelers was embarking on a new adventure. While some of our ancestors traveling from Africa to Australia redirected their course to Australia, some groups who separated from these travels reached Europe around the same time, about 50,000 years ago. The people who journeyed from Africa to Australia did not experience a drastic climate change. Temperatures were similar, and the environment was rich in familiar aspects. However, as the group moved north towards Europe, they found themselves in a world of intense cold and snowstorms, something they had never encountered before. Hunting and gathering in such conditions seemed impossible. While we can summarize the cold climate they faced in a few lines, our ancestors had been gradually approaching this climatic geography for thousands of years. New generations, unaware of where their ancestors came from, considered the climate they lived in as the same climate their ancestors had experienced. Nevertheless, the hunter-gatherers striving to live in the fertile regions of inland Europe would have a similar adventure to the one encountered by other Homo sapiens during the journey to Australia. They would meet Neanderthals for the first time. Despite sharing a common ancestor with Neanderthals, Homo heidelbergensis, who evolved from Homo heidelbergensis that came from Africa hundreds of thousands of years ago, probably few people have heard of Homo heidelbergensis. If Neanderthals are our cousins, Homo heidelbergensis becomes our great-grandparents who have heard your name. Europe was home to an evolved species, and we do not know exactly when the pre-Neanderthal species first arrived in Europe. The earliest Homo remains in Europe date back to about 1 million years ago, but it remains difficult to provide an exact date. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, encountering their cousins the Neanderthals, likely felt a mix of fear and admiration. When we refer to modern humans, we mean Homo sapiens. However, it is crucial to remember that Neanderthals were also human, and in this context, not to confuse the term. All species referred to using the Homo term are human species. Just as we are Homo sapiens, they were Homo neanderthalensis. Just as there are many species of birds, we must acknowledge the fact that there were other Homo or human species living alongside or before us. Since we are the only surviving Homo species, it is normal for us to use the term human or Homo to refer to ourselves. Being the only surviving example of our species makes it challenging for us to grasp the fact that other human species also existed. However, the genetic difference between us and our cousins is only about 0.12%. Imagine how close we are. Genetic research even shows us that interbreeding between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens has led to us inheriting many genetic factors from them. These interbreeding events are especially more prevalent in Asia and the Caucasus. While the rest of the world has about a 2% Neanderthal gene, this percentage can go up to 4% in Asian and Caucasus populations. The 2% and 4% here refer to the direct transmission of genes through interbreeding, not genetic similarity. The first discoveries about Neanderthals involved assembling existing data about who Neanderthals were, and this process has been ongoing for many years, continually adding small pieces to a large puzzle. The initial pieces of this puzzle were fossilized bones that miners, working in Neander Valley in Germany, stumbled upon and initially believed to be the skeleton of a bear. A local natural historian living in the region made an educated guess by suggesting that these bones belonged to a rickets-inflicted person on a stake. However, several decades later, it was understood that they belonged to another human species, and the species would take the name of the valley. Another and more significant excavation site is located on the cliffs along the coast of the Strait of Gibraltar. Due to the difficult accessibility of this rocky area on foot, the remains in the caves happen to be preserved by chance until today. In 1848, when Gibraltar was part of the British Empire, during construction work for a fortress, dynamics from the detonations on the rocks revealed the presence of some puzzling remains. At this stage of construction, skull-like remains were observed. Authorities who halted the work invited a lieutenant in the army and an amateur archaeologist to examine the remains. However, he couldn't figure out what it was. Was it a deformed human or the remains of a monkey? However, it would take half a century to determine what these remains were. This is how Neanderthal remains entered our lives, initially through these two discoveries. Neanderthals had adapted remarkably to the cold climate of the Ice Age. Their stocky, broad, and muscular build helped in conserving body heat, while their large nasal openings and lungs allowed them to control heat and have an immense body energy. They had thick bones and appeared more pointed because they lacked cheek hollows on their faces. Their skull structures, simpler than ours, had a prominent protrusion in certain areas, and their jaws were almost non-existent. Their faces had distinct protrusions and a structure that could appear somewhat ugly, making it hard for Homo sapiens encountering them to take their eyes off them. We mentioned that Neanderthals evolved from Homo heidelbergensis, and Homo heidelbergensis had heights reaching up to 2 meters. Therefore, early Neanderthals were taller. During their long stay in Europe, Neanderthals' heights further shortened due to dietary habits and the impact of climate conditions. With their weights being around 60 kilograms, this is in contrast to preserved Homo sapiens from the period when they had recently left Africa, who were on average 5 centimeters taller than modern humans. However, with changes in diet and geography, especially transitioning to agricultural societies, their heights decreased. In contemporary times, with better access than ever, there is a tendency towards an increase in height. The short, broad, and muscular bodies of Neanderthals helped them cope better with the cold climate. It also supported them in having more strength for hunting. In this way, Neanderthals led the rising human species and were among the top candidates to dominate the Earth. Neanderthals were the only species of European origin in the human evolutionary tree, and this alone led to admiration and the development of curiosity about them. The cranial capacity of Neanderthal women and men ranged between 1,300 and 1,600 cubic centimeters in rare cases. It could go up to 1,700 cubic centimeters in comparison. The cranial capacity of modern humans ranges from 1,250 to 1,400 cubic centimeters. This means that Neanderthals had larger brains than us, but it doesn't necessarily indicate higher intelligence. Intelligence is related to the functionality of the brain. Many behaviors of Neanderthals were similar to ours, and they even had numerous aspects in which they were more advanced than us. However, they lacked certain crucial features, such as our symbolic expression capability, and their world was distinct from ours. During the Ice Age, the steppe vegetation dominant in Europe, covered with ice, also had a rich plant cover capable of sustaining large populations of mammoths, bison, deer, and horses, essential food sources for Neanderthals. The Neanderthal landscape did not resemble the barren steppes of modern-day Europe. In fact, it did not resemble any place in the contemporary world. Neanderthals are a well-preserved species with fossilized bones, remnants from everyday life, and even DNA, allowing for detailed insights into their tool usage and craftsmanship. Neanderthals coexisted with Homo sapiens, our close relatives, during the same period. Neanderthals exhibited advanced skills in crafting and using tools. Their remains indicate that they were capable of creating complex tools. For instance, they could fashion cutting tools by striking stones at specific angles. They also succeeded in making axes with sharp edges using the same method. They attached these axes to handles, strengthening the connection with a type of adhesive they produced, resembling a primitive form of glue. This involved a complex production process that required a combination of stone, wood, and adhesive materials. The ability of Neanderthals to control fire is also noteworthy. The conscious production and management of fire were crucial skills for the people of that era. This skill demonstrates that Neanderthals were technologically advanced for their time. On the other hand, Cima del Oso, or bone pit, discovered in the Atapuerca Mountains in Spain, is interpreted by researchers as one of the earliest mass graves in history. This excavation site could provide more information about the lives and cultures of Neanderthals. Initially, the bones in Cima del Oso were thought to belong to Homo heidelbergensis, considered the ancestor of Homo neanderthalensis. However, it is now believed that these bones date back to an even earlier period, around 350,000 to 400,000 years ago. The bones exhibit early Neanderthal characteristics. In the narrow pit, 4,000 bones and teeth from 30 individuals were found, along with hundreds of animal bones belonging to predators such as cave bears, wolves, lions, and foxes. Among the bones in the cave, there is a rare reddish quartzite hand axe that has been carved. This artistic axe was named Excalibur, and it was initially thought to have been carved solely for artistic purposes. The discovery of this axe provided a significant clue that the cave was used as a burial site. Based on the discovery of Excalibur and other artifacts, the excavation team concluded that the cave served as a burial site. It is believed that a deliberate burial ceremony took place in the cave, with artifacts like Excalibur being used. Another crucial piece of evidence supporting this interpretation is the age profile of the buried individuals. The cave appears to be a burial site for a community, with individuals from various age groups interred. The age profiles indicate that all 30 individuals buried here died during the most productive periods of their lives. Only one of them is a child in adolescence, and only 3 of them lived beyond the age of 30. If it were just a mass grave, one would expect a higher number of deaths among children or elderly individuals. However, the bodies here died during their strongest and most productive years, signifying a profound meaning for the other members of the group. Researchers believe that an early disaster, such as a drought, forced the early Neanderthals to seek refuge in the Taurus Mountains, and only the fittest members survived to reach this area. The deaths among those who made it were commemorated with a monumental ceremony and burial. Based on the remains, it is understood that the majority of Neanderthals with strong arms predominantly used their right hands. Additionally, when examining the teeth of the individuals buried in Cima, it becomes apparent that they had a penchant for using toothpicks. Another significant finding in this cave is the insight into Neanderthals' concept of family. Rather than a complex harem culture where one male is associated with multiple females, Neanderthals at Cima had simpler relationship structures, sometimes based on monogamous partnerships and occasional dual commitments. Even the most ordinary individuals at Cima had such muscular body structures that they resembled American football players. The oldest individual at Cima was estimated to be over 50 years old and had the best preserved skull ever found. Despite serious dental problems, he managed to live beyond 50 years, which was remarkable for that era. He likely needed assistance with chewing his food due to dental issues. Cima Cave, known as the oldest site containing the ancestors of Neanderthals, still holds many unanswered questions. What set Neanderthals apart from other Homo species and established the most distinctive resemblance with us were their advanced planning skills. Advanced planning required thinking about possibilities, making choices among the outcomes of actions, and, most importantly, imagination. To engage in advanced planning, one needed to understand the consequences of each step and, crucially, to be able to plan in complex situations. Neanderthals excelled in possessing these capabilities. Their advanced planning skills weren't limited to individual activities but extended to group activities as well. Recognizing the significance of this for a species separate from us is crucial. Advanced planning organized social relationships, as argued by anthropologist Robin Dunbar, the proponent of the social brain hypothesis. According to this hypothesis, advanced planning turned into a reproductive advantage by successfully regulating social relationships, facilitating the formation of efficient groups and families in every aspect. According to this hypothesis, one of the significant factors contributing to brain growth was the development of the social brain. We now consider 250,000 years ago as the period when the transition from pre-Neanderthal to full Neanderthals took place. During this time, our cousins, who were Neanderthals, were developing a lifestyle in Africa that was similar, if not identical, to ours. They used a scraping system to make clothes from the hides of hunted animals. Although scraping hides was likely a time-consuming and labor-intensive task, they hadn't developed techniques like bone needle crafting, as Homo sapiens did. The English Channel, located between England and France, served as a connection between the mainland and Britain during certain periods based on climate changes. Despite being underwater for thousands of years due to sea level changes during the Ice Ages, 28 hand axes and some mammoth remains were discovered during the construction of the Channel Tunnel. The significance of this finding lies first in the fact that the region used as a bridge by Neanderthals was reconstructed as a tunnel by their Homo sapiens cousins hundreds of thousands of years later. This surprising continuity in species behavior indicates that their behaviors did not change much over time. Secondly, it suggests the possibility of Neanderthal remains on the Channel Islands, which have not been submerged and could have served as suitable places for cooking mammoth meat. Numerous mammoth and rhinoceros bones dating back to 130,000 years ago, buried beneath the surface during the Ice Age, were uncovered in the region. While preparing to transport the bones to the research center, a research assistant noticed water dripping onto them. When he looked up, he made an interesting discovery. He realized that mammoths and rhinoceroses might have fallen from the cliff directly above. One supporting piece of evidence was the number of discovered skulls. Mammoth skulls were heavy, and if Neanderthals had hunted these animals elsewhere, they wouldn't bother transporting the heads. Considering the spread of bones on top of each other, it became apparent that the animal remains here resulted from two different mass deaths and that these deaths occurred by falling from the cliff. The animals must have been herded to fall off the cliff and die, indicating an organized group strategy. This hunting technique was used until recently. Native Americans herded buffalo toward cliffs, frightening them to make them fall off, creating a ready-made source of food. Members of the hunting party strategically positioned themselves along the route to successfully guide the herds. Implementing such a hunting strategy required advanced planning, execution of the plan, and effective communication among Neanderthals. As will be understood later, this ritualistic hunting technique, performed by driving animals off cliffs, was practiced by Neanderthals in many places across Europe. Among the remains, many burned bones were found, indicating that Neanderthals, who had developed the use of fire for survival during the Ice Age, organized a barbecue party to cook the meat of these mammoths. It's already known that they generally ate cooked meat. Despite its health drawbacks, they even cooked inside caves if they lived there. The interior would be filled with smoke, but Neanderthals seemed not to mind. Not only did they consume the hunted animals, but they also used the leftover bones as fuel to keep warm in the cold. For over 200,000 years, this region was utilized as a barbecue party area by Neanderthals. Among the remains found on the Channel Island of Jersey, there is a considerable number of high-quality flint stones that appear to have been brought from elsewhere and reused several times. Understanding the importance of high-quality flint for starting fires, Neanderthals, even during those years when carrying items was challenging, did not hesitate to do so. Yes, during those years, no human species was particularly fond of carrying items. The oldest hand axe of the Homo genus that has reached our time is a 1.76 million-year-old hand axe found near Lake Turkana in Kenya. Although these hand axes were cumbersome and had a difficult construction at that time, they were made as single-use tools. Until about 1.5 million years after this time, when carrying something was considered a disadvantage, Homo species chose to abandon the items they used. As we reach 250,000 years ago, signs of change, along with the production of tools to facilitate carrying items, began to appear in Homo species. Neanderthals carrying flintstones collected from riverbeds allowed them to travel long distances, enabling them to encounter Homo sapiens more frequently. The almost sole findings that have survived from this distant past to the present day are bones and some stone tools, making it not a difficult quest to examine the social life of Neanderthals by looking at all these. During periods when tools began to become more complex, we can observe that social relationships in tribal groups were deepening and becoming more sophisticated. This led to strong bonds and the establishment of more extensive social structures. This logical chain is based on the social brain hypothesis, as mentioned earlier. The fundamental prediction of the hypothesis is that our species is highly social, and the size of the group plays a significant role in our success. Whether in sports, singing, or even praying together in a religious setting, we have all experienced the dizzying feeling of being part of a large group. In everyday life, this sense of belonging is not only a desirable thing for people but also necessary for survival and cohesion. A group is not just made up of people living together. It's about defining a network of relationships consisting of individuals we recognize as reliable allies or friends. According to the social brain hypothesis, one of the most important factors in the development of the brains of Homo species, including us, was the complexity and development of social relationships. This parallelism, according to the hypothesis's author Robin Dunbar, indicates that chimpanzees live in groups of 50 to 55 individuals, while for Homo sapiens, the optimal group size for efficiency is around 150 individuals. This number is also known as the Dunbar number. According to this theory, the cleanliness in chimpanzee groups is an indicator of bonding, and members clean each other's bodies. However, because cleaning takes time, the group's efficiency reaches its highest level with around 50 to 55 members. However, for Homo sapiens, bonding is achieved through verbal activities, facilitating the growth of the group. As mentioned, the efficient group size for Homo sapiens is around 150. Even companies observe the effectiveness of this number, and large companies with thousands of employees divide their workforce into units consisting of 100 to 150 individuals for efficient collaboration. Neanderthals also lived in groups reaching around 130 individuals, resembling ours. These groups often relied on clusters consisting of up to 30 individuals, or approximately 4 to 6 families. These clusters had good relations with each other. Neanderthals' eye sockets were much larger than piercings of Homo sapiens, indicating that their social relationships relied much more on visual cognition. We mentioned chimpanzees cleaning each other and Homo sapiens talking. Neanderthals had a communication system that relied more on seeing each other, recognizing their faces. In short, Neanderthals conducted their social relationships through visual memory. The fact that Neanderthals lived in such large groups and progressed in tool usage could have contributed to their further development. However, between 250,000 years and 130,000 years, the cold climate prompted them to focus solely on survival. After this challenging period, during the subsequent 10,000 years of warmth, they could travel much farther into Asia, and they were not alone on this journey. This process of expansion led both Neanderthals and Homo sapiens to develop a shared modern behavior, systematic burial of the dead. We previously mentioned the possibly first mass grave in Sema, which could be an action driven by this sense of loyalty, but regardless, it was not a systematically pursued burial process with an eternal purpose. Burial practices driven by respect for the deceased, the desire for eternity, and perhaps fear only extend back to around 100,000 years ago. This behavior was observed in both Homo sapiens and Neanderthals during the same periods. In fact, we cannot definitively say whether the modern burial process originated with Homo sapiens or Neanderthals. Long-standing debates about whether Neanderthals intentionally buried their dead seem to have finally ended with recent excavations. In a recent excavation around Shanidar Cave in Iraq, Some bodies were reported to be deliberately placed in excavated pits. The first discovery indicating that Neanderthals buried their dead came from excavations conducted by Ralph Seletsky in the 1950s and 60s in northern Iraq. The discovery of 10 Neanderthal remains in scattered flowers during these excavations was thought to suggest funeral rituals. According to Science News, the burial behavior, usually associated with Homo sapiens, signifies compassion, care for community members, mourning for the deceased, or perhaps a belief in life after death. Excavations in caves in northern Israel revealed 45 Neanderthal bodies dating back 130,000 to 60,000 years. Archaeologists uncovered around 20 deliberately buried Neanderthal remains when they re-examined Kabra Cave in Israel in 1982. At Ahmed Cave, excavations revealed the remains of 16 Neanderthals. These excavations showed that Neanderthals, known to have had the largest Homo brain to date, in both species, Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, coexisted in a common area for the first time. To confidently claim that an intentional burial process took place, archaeologists observed some critical points. These include the positioned appearance of the buried individual, completeness of the skeletons, the pit being excavated for a burial purpose rather than another, and the presence of findings suitable for a burial plane, such as gift-like objects. Some Neanderthal graves in Kabra are free from all speculation. One example is an adult individual buried around 60,000 years ago, showing conformity to all specified details. The burial suggests that the individual was intentionally buried shortly after their death. Another discovery from Kabra Cave provides answers to more questions. Until this finding, archaeologists were in debate about whether Neanderthals spoke or not. However, the discovery of a Neanderthal in Kabra Cave with a hyoid bone, a bone closely related to speech, similar to that of Homo sapiens, suggests that at least Neanderthals had some sounds for communication. Child burials of Neanderthals in the Middle East provide different findings than those of adults. A Neanderthal child burial in Ahmed Cave was adorned with a deer bone, while a child burial in Kirpina was associated with a deer antler. In Homo sapiens child burials from the same regions, more attractive animal bones were found. A child burial in the same regions included a pig mandible, while another had deer antlers. These seemingly small differences highlight both the similarities and differences in perspectives between the two species. During these periods, while Neanderthals still lived with a simpler lifestyle, Homo sapiens began to make jewelry from animal teeth and bones. Now we are moving to an interesting stage, Neanderthals reaching the Altai Mountains. The presence of compassion and emotional factors in Neanderthals has become clearer as the data's clarity increases, particularly in relatively recent periods. The climate turning cold again made survival difficult for all Homo species, forcing them, like Neanderthals, to extend their presence to the Altai Mountains. This is an immense distance. Genes of Neanderthals living about 54,000 years ago in Shagarskaya and Okladnikov caves, about 100 kilometers from Denisovan Cave at the foothills of the Altai Mountains in the Siberian region of Russia, were examined. It was revealed that 2 of the genes belonged to a father and daughter, indicating they were part of the same family. Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology led an international team that successfully sequenced the genomes of 13 individuals from a distant Neanderthal community in Siberia. At the end of the study, a matching pair of a father and a young girl emerged, marking the first discovery of a Neanderthal family. The first Neanderthal draft genome was published by this institute in 2010, and since then, researchers have managed to sequence 18 more genomes from 14 different archaeological sites across Eurasia. To explore the social structure of Neanderthals, researchers turned their attention to South Siberia, a region known for productive ancient DNA research, including the discovery of Denisovan human remains in the famous Denisovan Cave. Studies in this region revealed that Neanderthals and Denisovans had been present in this area for thousands of years and had interacted with each other. Researchers also found a pair of second-degree relatives, a young male and an adult female, perhaps a cousin, aunt, or grandmother. One of the most significant contributions of the studies in the Altai Mountains is obtaining numerous data about Neanderthal family life, which will be excitingly explored in the coming years. Another striking finding from this Neanderthal community is the extremely low genetic diversity, consistent with a group size of 20 individuals. This is much lower than recorded for any ancient or contemporary human population and is more similar to the group sizes of species on the brink of extinction. Research on Neanderthal and Homo sapiens interbreeding has shown that the two species did mate, and even today, we all carry direct Neanderthal genes. Particularly in the Caucasus and Asian populations, direct Neanderthal gene is found at a rate of about 4%. While the Neanderthal gene is absent in the African continent, in Europe, this rate is around 2%. Institutions like National Geographic can report the percentage of Neanderthal genes you have and how much you resemble other races when you send them saliva samples and make the payment under certain conditions. The question of why Neanderthals and Homo sapiens engaged in relationships may remain a mystery, but considering the period's fundamental function of accessing food, we can say that the exchange of mates between the two species was a selection for survival. Laura Warrick, an anthropologist from Pennsylvania State University, reported in 2017 that they found bacterial traces except for a Neanderthal in northwest Spain and believed it came from saliva transmission. The team studying microorganisms suggests that this situation might have originated from sexual contact or consuming food together. Researchers say that this situation is not the sole product and believe that the HPV-A-type virus in Homo sapiens may have resulted from this interaction, not only from Neanderthals to Homo sapiens but also from Homo sapiens to Neanderthals. Many sexually transmitted diseases have been identified. Interbreeding with Neanderthals was not a rare occurrence. It was a widespread activity that affected all individuals of our species. However, mating with our ancestors was not a bad thing. On the contrary, it has greatly contributed to us still being alive today. We have inherited numerous traits from their robust genes and gained immunity against many diseases through them. The genes we acquired from interbreeding with Neanderthals, for example, help us fight against deadly viruses. Lord from Stanford University notes that this virus is associated with the frequency of various cancers. Therefore, if you're alive today, you can say that you owe it to our ancestors who mated with Neanderthals. The extinction of Neanderthals is associated with various theories. According to one theory, it could have been caused by a volcanic eruption leading to a decrease in oxygen levels in the atmosphere. Ultimately, the lung and nasal structures of Neanderthals might have been more affected in this scenario compared to Homo sapiens. However, this theory notes that there is no concrete evidence of such a large-scale eruption in the extensive geographic areas where Neanderthals lived. Another theory suggests that Neanderthals were not as reproductively efficient as Homo sapiens. According to this theory, low reproduction rates might have led to the gradual extinction of Neanderthals after interacting with Homo sapiens. Climate change is also considered a significant possibility for the demise of Neanderthals. While Neanderthals showed less advancement compared to Homo sapiens and generally sustained their lives, Homo sapiens gradually excelled, particularly in the last 50,000 years, in skills related to shelter, clothing, and hunting. In conclusion, each theory regarding the extinction of Neanderthals is unique, and a combination of these factors might have contributed. However, there is still no definitive information on this matter. Perhaps with further research, we can gain more insights into why our cousins disappeared and find a key to salvation for Homo sapiens. Thank you very much for watching the video until the end. If you like and subscribe to the video, you will make me very happy. Thank you again.